Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Price Check here on the In the Zone Network, where we go city to city, state to state, worldwide. Now, typically, we are only operating and covering the world of basketball here on the Price Check. But, of course, new year, new us, right? Let's change things up a little bit. So, we're adding some football into our area of expertise, our repertoire, so to speak, here at the Price Check. And so, for those of y'all who've watched us here on In the Zone, we've definitely done That's Football show here last year, covering all levels of football from NFL even down to high school. And so, of course, natural for me to bring a little piece of that back here for the Price Check. And so, start today talking about the NFL playoffs, as well as a couple coaches that are going to be on the move before jumping into our typical NBA coverage. And so, of course, playoffs are set right now. Wild Card Weekend is shaping up to be a really, really good one. Got some good matchups here. So, of course, want to run down our predictions on those games. And, of course, got to start with Saturday game, first game of the slate. Got the Houston Texans and Cleveland Browns in Houston. Houston, of course, surprisingly winning the AFC South Division, first-year head coach DeMeco Ryans, and, of course, rookie quarterback C.J. Stroud being two key parts of that. Now, on the opposite sideline, of course, you got another Coach of the Year candidate, Kevin Stefanski. His team is on quarterback number 4 here with Joe Flacco, of all people, who, was probably washed up and out of the league for, about 3 years now before coming back and helping lead this team to the playoffs after the Deshaun Watson situation here earlier in the year, with him missing some time and then ultimately being ruled out for the rest of the season. This is also a Cleveland Browns team that lost Nick Chubb literally in the very first quarter of game number 2 of this season, and found a way to claw themselves back into the playoff mix and really have a pretty stout team and a pretty talented team on both sides of the ball here. And so, very difficult matchup. Now, you look at this game, you actually saw this matchup a couple weeks back, and Cleveland won that game pretty convincingly in Houston. And so, I do think it's going to be a close game, but I think a lot of those guys on that Cleveland side of the ball, having been through some of these playoff games and some of these wars, when the stakes are at its highest, I do think that is going to give them a little bit of an edge over this young Houston team. So, obviously, DeMeco Ryans being part of that San Francisco 49er staff in previous years, he's, of course, familiar with what it takes to win in the playoffs. But again, pretty young team that he has there in Houston. I do think that they'll benefit from the playoff experience, but I think this is going to be a Cleveland win on the road, setting them up with a potential matchup with their division rival, the Baltimore Ravens, there in the divisional round next week. So I'm taking Cleveland in that one. I'll say 24-21. I think it's a close game, but ultimately Cleveland's guys a little bit more experience. I think that gives them the edge, and they're able to win that one. So Saturday night game, you've got Kansas City Chiefs hosting the Miami Dolphins. What I guess some folks are calling the Peacock Classic here. Going to be streaming only on Peacock. Now, this is also a game that we saw earlier in the year, I believe overseas in Germany. You had Kansas City winning that one in a pretty close game down to the wire. Now you shift that to Arrowhead Stadium. It's going to be cold. There's some winter weather on the way for that one. Now, typically, I would kind of just side with Mahomes. The Chiefs can't really pick against those guys. That team does not scare me a lot this year. They've been a little bit shaky on the offensive side of the ball. The defense has played outstanding in periods this season, but I do think that Kansas City team is vulnerable. Travis Kelce does not look like the Travis Kelce that we're accustomed to. Mahomes has been his same exceptional self, but his role players, his receivers, have just not been getting the job done throughout the season. They've been pretty inconsistent. The one guy, of course, that stepped up a lot over the last few weeks is Rashee Rice, but are you trusting, a rookie in this spot to be your primary go-to on the offensive side of the ball? Of course, you got Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon in that backfield as well to be able to lean on a little bit. But I do think that this Chiefs team can be beat. Now, flip side to that is, are the Dolphins the team to beat them? Of course, they're banged up right now. Injuries to a lot of guys on that team. You got Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb on the defensive side of the ball that are out for the rest of the season. Xavier Howard may potentially miss this game as well. You've got Raheem Mostert and Jalen Waddle on the offensive side of the ball that have been banged up. Tyreek Hill has even been banged up at different parts here towards the tail end of the season. So a lot of guys that are on the mend here, but I do think this is going to end up being a very down to the wire game. Part of me wants to pick the Dolphins. Now, again, the snow and whatever winter weather that we get may add to a little bit of the mystery to this game. But I do think this Dolphins team has the offensive firepower to go into Arrowhead and beat Kansas City. It's just about what type of defensive effort and really more so offensive effort you get out of the Chiefs and those receivers and pass catchers on the side of the ball with Patrick Mahomes. So as much as I'm kind of waffling back and forth on this one, I'll lean, the Chiefs. Similar to Browns and Texans, will go 3-point game, 23-20, 24-21, somewhere in there. But I do not think this is a game that you can just bank on the Kansas City Chiefs winning. I do think this is going to be one that is a tough matchup for them, which, again, was already a tough matchup for them when we saw this game earlier in the season. But I do think that the Miami injuries are going to have to catch up to them at some point, which we already saw on Sunday in their game against the Bills for that AFC East division. So, Chiefs win that one in a close one, but would not be surprised at all if the Dolphins pull that out. So, moving to Sunday's games, I think these are really the best matchups of the weekend. First off, you got the Steelers going into Buffalo in a 2-7 matchup in the AFC to play the Bills. The Steelers team is a team that just doesn't quit, doesn't die, man. You've had, Kenny Pickett at quarterback. You've had Mitch Trubisky and now Mason Rudolph at quarterback. They've just been finding ways to win these games time and time again. So, this Buffalo team that come on the last few weeks, they were looking pretty shaky there towards the middle of the season, but Josh Allen really putting that team on his back right now. Kind of hard for me to pick against Buffalo in Buffalo. Now, of course, I say that, and this is going to be the game that they probably lose in some kind of surprising fashion. But Steelers, of course, definitely going to be able to run the ball on Buffalo. But when it comes down to it, is Mason Rudolph really going to be able to beat this Buffalo Bills team? And I just don't think that's going to be the case. I think this Steelers team and Mike Tomlin, man, shout out to him. Yet another winning season here, or non-losing season, we can say. Again, constantly getting the best out of his players. And I do think they're going to keep it, again, playoff football especially, going to keep it close. They have the recipe to do that, but I think Josh Allen is just going to be too much for them on the other side of things. So Bills win that one. I know they're like a 10-point favorite in terms of the betting markets and things like that. Don't think it gets to be 10 points, but I can see the Bills win this one by a touchdown, maybe 10 points if it gets a little bit late and some things go their way. But probably more so 28-21 type of game here to move on to the next round. And then going to the NFC side of things, two really great matchups here. You first got the Dallas Cowboys hosting the Green Bay Packers. Mike McCarthy, of course, getting the coach against his former team. And you got this Green Bay Packers team with Jordan Love that definitely not missing Aaron Rodgers at all right now. They've been able to continue their winning ways, claw themselves back into the 7th seed in the NFC. And this Cowboys team, man, typically we joke about, Cowboys playoffs, they're going to come up short at some point. This might be their best chance to win a Super Bowl. And I'm typically not one that buys into the Dallas making a playoff run or a Super Bowl run thing because, of course, we just have not seen it for the better part of the last 30 years. But I do think if there's going to be a year for them, this might be the one. And I think the statement needs to be winning this game handily against Green Bay. Now, Green Bay, of course, has been able to hang around a lot of these games and play very well. Again, young team, but Jordan Love has definitely improved his play over the course of the season. Those young receivers have made plays and plays and plays all year long for that team. And, of course, they can run the ball with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. But I think this Dallas offense is just too much. We've seen Joe Barry's defense there in Green Bay leave a lot to be desired on that side of the field. And so I think Dallas wins this one, probably something like 31-21. A lot of points probably going to be scored in this game, but I think Dallas ends up winning that one pretty comfortably. So Dallas wins that one handily, moves on to the next round, and then matchup that most people are talking about right now. Los Angeles Rams going to Detroit in the 3-6 matchup for the NFC. Of course, a lot of storylines that are going to go into this one. You got Sean McVay going up against his former quarterback, Jared Goff. You got Detroit Lions going up against their former quarterback, Matt Stafford, in Detroit. And of course, there's nothing more than Matt Stafford could ever want than to want to put his former team out of the playoffs in their first home playoff game in roughly 30 years. And so, as you guys can see by the shirt today, I'm still representing the St. Louis Rams because, of course, we should have never lost a team, but that's another story for another time. Rams still a team that is nearest and dearest to my heart. And not even just out of them being the team that I root for, I think they probably win this matchup. They are the underdog, obviously, but this Detroit Lions team does not have a lot of guys that have seen playoff games or had playoff success. Jared Goff has definitely been there in his time with the Rams, but you got a lot of inexperienced guys kind of having their first playoff moment. Again, a lot of pressure on them having that first home game in the playoffs for Detroit in quite some time. Of course, the building is going to be buzzing, but you got Matt Stafford going into there looking for an opportunity to silence that crowd and silence that team after moving on a couple years ago. And so I do think this is one of the bigger upset picks of the weekend for a lot of people. It also does not help for Detroit that they're probably going to be without Sam Laporta for this game after he went down with a knee injury in Week 18. So picking the Rams in this one in an upset. Again, probably like a 3 to 6 point game in some way. I'll go 24-20, maybe 27-23 in a win for the Rams and probably setting themselves up with a divisional rematch against the San Francisco 49ers in the divisional round. And then, of course, final game of the wild card weekend actually taking place on Monday. You got the Philadelphia Eagles going into Tampa Bay to play the Buccaneers. Probably the worst game of the weekend. I'm just going to say it. Now, that's not because of the two teams involved per se. It's based on how those two teams have been playing most of the year. Now, this Eagles team started the season 10-1, ultimately ended up losing 5 of their last 6 games. This Buccaneers team has been a little bit shaky down the stretch, but obviously won the NFC South because that division is just not very good overall. And so Tampa Bay, of course, getting the benefit of the home field advantage in this one, but Eagles also reeling a little bit. Jalen Hurts dealing with a finger injury. They may not have A.J. Brown for this game. This Eagles team, man, that Super Bowl hangover looking real hangover-like for them as we've gotten to the whole stretch of the season. But I think this is still a game that they win. Tampa Bay does not scare me very much on the offensive side of the ball. Again, they still do have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, but Baker Mayfield is a guy that has been a little bit up and down throughout most of the season. More up than down here in recent games, but I do think that's a team that can definitely be beat. And this just may be the game that the Eagles need to get over the hump and kind of get back to their winning ways. But don't think it's going to be easy. I do think this is going to be a very close game again. Again, wouldn't shock me if the Buccaneers won, but I do think that the Buccaneers, even with the Eagles' struggles on defense, are still going to have a little bit of trouble moving the ball. So Eagles probably win this one. But wouldn't shock me, of course, if they lost. But I don't like the Eagles' chances beyond this game one bit. And so if they do happen to win this game, I definitely think they lose in a divisional round, whether that's them playing the 1 seed San Francisco or if they happen to be matched up with Dallas, the 2 seed in that one, because I do think Dallas beats Green Bay. So we'll have some interesting matchups to keep our eye on from the world of football here. But of course, now we transition to the world of basketball here in the NBA. Now, NBA-wise, of course, we've got a couple injuries that we have to hit on, but I also want to go a little bit stock up, stock down before we end the show on some of these teams coming into the new year and, of course, talking through their outlook for the rest of the season. So before we do that, though, of course, the biggest news out of the NBA this week, Ja Morant's season is now over due to a torn labrum in his shoulder. Has only been able to play in 9 games for Memphis this year. Of course, was suspended for the first 25 games of the season. And now, of course, is going to miss the rest of the season with that injury. So definitely not a good thing for Memphis regardless, but a season that was already a little bit lost for them with how they started during Ja's suspension absence. So, it'll be tough for them moving forward, but definitely some experience that those guys around Ja are going to be able to benefit from. Of course, Desmond Bane has played very well in Ja's absence this year. They've been, kind of having Jaren Jackson in and out of the lineup, so we'll see how he responds here over the coming weeks throughout the rest of the season. But I do think this is going to be, kind of looked at as a season from hell for Memphis. So how they respond next year we will see. But for all intents and purposes, their season is now ending right along with Ja's, because I don't think there's a way for them to claw back into the playoff hunt without Ja Morant here for the rest of the year. So another injury of note, Tyrese Halliburton for the Indiana Pacers injured his knee, mild knee sprain here. He'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks. And so that team probably going to be a little bit up and down without him over the course of the next couple of weeks, but at least knowing that he will come back here at some point from that injury. So avoided a major scare in that one. So can kind of look forward to his return to be able to get them back into their winning ways, so to speak. That, of course, they've had a little bit tougher time of things since the in-season tournament loss to the Lakers, but I think starting to kind of get things turned back around here now. Now, mention the Lakers. We are going to talk about them here as far as being one of our first teams whose stock we're actually looking down at right now. Stock down for the Lakers. Now, of course, Lakers are the home team for all intents and purposes here on the price check, but still not looking great. Now, they've won their last 2 games, won last night against the Raptors in a close one, 132 to 131. Also beat the Clippers on Sunday, 106 to 103. But again, very close games, and still only 5-11, I believe. I'm sorry, 5-10 since winning the in-season tournament early this year. So probably going to be a team that makes some trades at some point. We've, of course, heard the Zach LaVine rumors. We'll see if that trade actually comes to fruition. But definitely needing some kind of kickstart on offense since they are in the bottom third of the league right now in offensive efficiency. So we'll see if that turns itself around for the Lakers. But a little bit disappointing to be a game under 500 when you've had a mostly healthy LeBron James and Anthony Davis all season up until this point. So next team stock down for us, the Atlanta Hawks. Lost 6 of their last 10, and rumors right now that they're probably going to look to shake things up at the trade deadline. DeJounte Murray is a candidate for trade. I know he, of course, just recently signed a contract extension, but of course, not really seeing the fit between him and Trae Young. They want to build around Trae Young and Jalen Johnson, who's actually been playing outstanding all year and has been playing very well since returning from injury here the last couple games. But this Hawks team just has a lot of parts that you can tell just don't fit. We'll see if they can kind of build that team more in the image of what Quinn Snyder wants to do, both offensively and defensively moving forward. But definitely stock down on the Atlanta Hawks. And then the last team that we are down on right now, Golden State Warriors. I know, Draymond is coming back from suspension. Steph is still having a good season, but you've heard the rumors of guys like Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, those young guys being unhappy with their roles on the team. They're wanting to play more. And you just have, aging Klay Thompson, Kevon Looney looking a little bit longer too. They need some type of shakeup. And even right now, before they get that shakeup, they're on the outside of the play-in tournament looking in right now, let alone the playoff race. So I think it's going to take a lot for Golden State to kind of turn this thing around. We'll see if they can find some trades that make that happen. But I'm personally not seeing it. I think this is a team that is very well at risk of missing the playoffs, especially considering all the teams that they would have to get over just to get into the playoffs after potentially going through the play-in tournament again. So we'll see if that turns itself around. But right now, stock down on the Golden State Warriors. So, of course, ending on more of a positive note, we'll go stock up right now with 3 teams. First one, a team that I was a little bit low on after the OG Anunoby trade, the New York Knicks. I went on Twitter and, of course, said that I did not see this being a needle-moving trade for them. But what do you have it? They're 5-0 since they've made that trade. And so what you've seen is Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle have a lot more room to operate now, not having to share quite as much of that offensive load with RJ Barrett. And they have been lights out defensively since making that trade. And so, of course, they were a team that was pretty good defensively already, but have sewn up some of that perimeter defense that has troubled them a little bit. Guys like Precious Achiuwa helping step in and fill the void that was left behind by Mitchell Robinson's injury. So I do think this Knicks team is looking really good right now. Very interested to see if they make another move before the end of the season or if they stand pat now after trading for OG. But a team that is going to be dangerous come playoff time, given their defensive versatility, and then, of course, Jalen Brunson being lights out on offense and being that closer for them in the fourth quarter. So liking the Knicks, stock up for them right now. The other second team that we are stock up on right now, the New Orleans Pelicans. Again, a team that has been pretty inconsistent throughout most of the season, but winners of their 10 out of their last 14 since losing in the in-season tournament semifinals to the Lakers. Starting to find a little bit more balance on the offensive end between C.J. McCollum, Brandon Ingram, and Zion Williamson. And defensively, they've stepped up a lot here in those last 14 games. So we'll see if they can maintain that consistency, but liking what I'm seeing out of the Pelicans right now. And then last but not least on the stock up, got to go to the defending champs, the Denver Nuggets. They started, a little bit shaky here. We saw some periods over the last few weeks where Nikola Jokic, as well as some of those other guys, just kind of looked a little disinterested in terms of what they were doing throughout the season. But winners of 8 of their last 10. Jamal Murray back now, kind of finding his footing a little bit more after returning from injury. And that offense just continuing to flow through Jokic. Really, really hard team to beat. And they've actually stepped up a little bit defensively as well. Jokic, of course, not the turnstile that we all probably thought that he'd be coming into most of these games. But I'm interested to see if they make any changes to their role players. Those role guys on their team right now, pretty young, but gotta love what you're seeing out of guys like Peyton Watson, Christian Brown, and Reggie Jackson, for instance, who stepped in very admirably for Jamal Murray as he was out. So liking what I'm seeing from the defending champs, and right now, gotta assume that even with new contenders presenting themselves like the Minnesota Timberwolves and Oklahoma City Thunder, Western Conference still goes through Denver when it's all said and done. So that'll do it for us here on the Price Check today. We're actually going to be coming to you now every Wednesday. Videos dropping on YouTube by 5 p.m. every Wednesday. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, turn the notifications on, all of the above for all things Price Check here on YouTube. And until next time, I'm your host, Josh Price. Check it out.